No. I don't know why this presentation is not coming up on this iPad here. I hit that. All right. Yeah, I see. Let me. I have it on my iPad, so I can. At any rate, Hanny lives in Orlando now with his wife and 1-year-old son Mikey. Um, so they hopefully will be attending liturgy with us tomorrow morning. First Saturday of every month is all English liturgies, by the way. I don't see anybody in here who's part of the married couples, but every Saturday is also there's a class for couples every Saturday after the first Saturday of every month for the uh, remaining future here. All right. Um, Where's AirDrop? Sorry, guys, 1 second. Do you know why it's not coming up? Oh, here it goes. Okay, I think we got it. I stopped streaming. All right. Okay. So in the name of the Father and Son, and Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. I'm bringing it up. And that was the introduction, though, and I'll let him share anything else that he'd like to if you have any questions for him. At the end, I'll have some announcements.
So it doesn't work?
And we'll be
So it doesn't work?
I thought I shared your screen.
Yeah. All right. Wow, this mic is serious. Listen, man, we don't have to get into details that aren't necessary. All right. Hey, guys. So I don't know about y'all, but this is really overwhelming for me. Like coming here, seeing the new building, beautiful church, Men in Black in the future that's happening. Like Raleigh changed big time. I'm so excited for what you guys are gonna do. Funny thing is that this is live streamed. Okay. All right. Hold on. Let me censor myself a little bit then. All right. So there's one particular person that I keep hearing about from people nonstop all over the country. Okay, two people. We lived in Detroit for 2 years, and then we moved to Orlando. And so we know people in Clearwater because that's where Monica's from in that area. And George Bastauros is nonstop on the people's, the tips of their, tongue because they all go to Hawaii, and they're like, hey, do you know that little American outreach kid named George? I think he's from North Carolina. And, literally, I don't know how many people, have been talking about you nonstop. So I just want to let you know you're famous now. I don't know if it's for good or bad reasons, but you're famous now.
Okay, if you're gonna say, I have to say.
All right, go ahead. What happened was.
Honest to God, in front of the altar. Every time people ask me what makes me love the church so much, I always say I had this discipleship and role models that was started with Haney. Haney really. When I talk about introduction, it's not proper. Seriously.
I gave him $50, honestly. I promised him my watch. That's why he's asking if it's 44.
You guys understand how happy I'm now with that because he was that culture, that Coptic culture that you just fell in love with the entire church. You see him and you fall in love with the entire church. So I'm so
miss you too, man. I miss all you guys. Honestly, like y'all can't tell, but I'm like really overwhelmed, like on the inside. Excited to see all you guys and just even be here in general. So, yeah, happy October. I think, other thing too. All right. So, isn't Mina B great? Isn't he fantastic? Like, some. You know what? I'm just gonna leave it at that. We don't need to get into mishkilas, but y'all are blessed to have Mina B too. By the way, the fact that he left Charlotte to be here in Raleigh, big baraka.
What do you mean about what? What's that mean?
He left Charlotte to be here in Raleigh.
What's leaving Charlotte? This is Raleigh. He's from.
He left Charlotte. He was born, raised, all the shenanigans over there, and then came here 3 years ago.
It's not like he didn't sacrifice. This is the greatest.
You would be surprised.
Isn't this the greatest place?
Well done. Well done. All right. So today we're going to talk about kind of like a little random-ish topic. So it's not necessarily a Bible study or anything. But to get us started off, I need a volunteer to be able to read for me. Who's the best reader? All right. My man is so humble. I love it. All right. Oh, is that working?
Okay, yeah.
Man, it's just so high-tech now.
Then Jesus entered and passed through Jericho. Now behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus, who was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. And he sought to see who Jesus was, but could not because of the crowd, for he was of short stature. So he ran ahead and climbed up a sycamore tree to see him, for he was going to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him and said to him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house. So he made haste and came down and received him joyfully.
Keep going.
But when they saw it, they all complained, saying, he has gone to be a guest with a man who is a sinner. Then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, look, Lord, I give half of my goods to the poor, and if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore fourfold. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because he also is the son of Abraham. For this has come to seek and to save that which was lost.
Thank you. So, pop quiz. When did you guys hear this last? Wow. We know who attended liturgy. Job well done. All right. So, this is a very common, famous story we all know. So, the question that we want to present, who do we relate to the most in this story? Who are the characters of the story? Count them. Who's number one? Mash, Jesus. Who's number two? Zacchaeus. The multitude. The people that what? Mocked him. All right. So who would you guys say that we relate the most to? All right. 1 point that says Zacchaeus. State your case. Who says Zacchaeus?
The world is the mockers, and if we try to follow Christ, they try to push us down and make us like seem like we're outcasts or. So Zacchaeus.
Wait, I'm confused. Is that a case for Zacchaeus or?
Yeah, Zacchaeus. We are like Zacchaeus.
Okay, all right. So that's
we
it.
want to follow Christ and do all we can to. The multitude is pushing us, like holding us down.
Okay. Blake.
So we should relate to Zacchaeus, but I think a lot of times we end up being the multitude.
What was the multitude doing?
They're saying, look, he's gone. They're judging, not Zacchaeus, they're actually judging Jesus for going to sit in Zacchaeus' house. Said he's gone to be with a sinner. So
Okay.
instead of being Christian in mindset where like, this person is bad and no one should associate with them, how dare you go and spend any time with them and try to comfort them or tell them that they could be saved.
All right. I like the discussion that's happening here. So let's put this in our back pocket then, with that in mind. Because obviously what the answers we're hearing is that none of us are Christ. Some of us believe that we should be Zacchaeus and strive to be Zacchaeus. And the others say that we are actually relating more to the crowd because we push each other down, we judge others, etc. All right? Huh? Okay, so between Zacchaeus and the crowd, which one of them was the sinner? All of them. But what did Zacchaeus do that's different from the crowd? But before that, before he repented and said, "I give my goods to the poor fourfold." So that was the sin he committed. But what did he do that's different from the crowd? What does that mean? What does that stand for? Going against the norm. And he had the attitude that I am going to see Christ. I don't care if these people are blocking me from Christ. I don't care if I'm short and I look like a goofball climbing this tree. I need to see him. So he had a very different attitude, right? So let's hit a different scenario first, all right? So let's say you are a manager at a company, all right? You got Alex and you got Bobby, all right? I tried to pick gender neutral roles here so we don't, have that whole situation happen, all right? So both are interviewing for the same job. Both have the same experience and the skills you need for the job. How do you know who to pick? So both have the same resume, the same skills that you need, same experience. So I heard personality and whoever impresses. Let's start with personality. What does that mean? You got to charm your way in. I'm telling you, Barney Stinson. I love it. All right. But talk to me a little bit more about charming your way in. What does that mean?
I think this is a real skill set. It's like, so you know who you're approaching.
Uh-huh.
And based off of knowing who you're approaching, not that you
Manipulate, but that you understand who you're trying to communicate to. And so, for example, if I'm trying to press you, I'm gonna come up with my Jordans and my Apple gear, and I'm gonna be like, "Oh, cool, you got the 44."
Yeah, tell me how great I am and how much I impacted your life. Yeah. I'm with you. Go ahead.
So stuff like that. Yeah.
All right, awesome. What'd you say, Bishoy? Impress the boss. Was that what you said? I thought you said something else. All right, so impress the boss. What does that mean?
So during the interview, when they ask you the questions, they're looking for a specific answer. So if you say that specific answer, then you have a higher chance of getting that job.
Correct.
So if they have the same qualifications, but one answers the correct answer, but the other one is fooling around with the boss.
Yep.
So I would rather go with the more professional than the one that's trying to get an easy way in.
Okay. Blake.
So I would say that kind of falls into what we call work culture, right? Who fits the culture of the company better? So in this case, maybe if you're trying to relate it back to being Christian, who's more like Christ or more willing to be like Christ? It's not about the goodness of the person, because we're all sinners, of course, but it's who fits the culture better, right?
Yes. Beautiful. Love it. Anyone else?
I disagree.
Disagree with what?
Like that it's a culture thing for relating to Christ. Like it's a personality thing.
Say it. What do you mean?
Because I'd rather hear your explanation before I just jump to that we're all.
I mean, so the cool thing is you guys are digging really deep into it, which means that you guys understand with every single situation that there's various factors that really come into play, rather than it just being black and white. All right. So a lot of the stuff that we're covering today is actually by a Christian pastor in North America named John Maxwell. And he is a Christian leader in organizations that does a lot of motivational speeches, etc. And he is basically used by the Fortune 500 and a bunch of the top CEOs across the company to really come and help develop leadership skills. And so what he actually says is that the biggest difference is attitude. So if two people are equal in skills and they have the same experience, how do you pick? You pick the one with the best attitude, and he calls it the difference maker. Okay? Attitude is something that, you guys are mentioning, are those intangible skills. So being able to, culture is a very big deal. Being able to connect with people and having emotional intelligence is a very big deal. And this is kind of a big factor that's related to both of those that come into play. So for instance, you can see like when you walk into an Apple store, it's a very different culture from if you walk into some other store like a Target. You know, anybody can be in there, it doesn't matter. But they're looking for specific people in Apple. If you go into any organization and your job has to deal with interacting with people and you don't know how to talk and deal with people, then that's going to be a big issue. And those are the kind of things they look for. So whenever you do a job interview, they say that they're not listening for the answers that you're giving, but they're seeing how you respond to your interview questions, not actual words that come out. So John Maxwell says that from his perspective, attitude is the biggest difference maker. And this is a little bit of what we want to talk about today. So what is attitude? All right. So attitude, I'm getting one now with this iPad. So attitude is the inward feeling expressed by outward behavior. Does it make sense? So your inward feelings, the things that you feel and believe on the inside, is being expressed. So it's not something that's inward and stays inward. It's always being expressed. And you can always tell that people, like, have you guys ever had a situation when you're just in a bad mood? They can tell. They're like, hey, what's wrong? Why? Because your inwards are being expressed outwards, right? So your attitude colors every aspect of your life. It is like the mind's paintbrush. So whatever you have in your mind and your heart, basically your attitude, which is what is being expressed outward, is the paintbrush. What does that mean? What is a paintbrush? And like, what's the significance about it? Huh? So, yes. So basically you have a painter who has his feelings and he's trying to put it on a canvas. That paintbrush is what is doing that, all right? So your attitude, it's like the mind's paintbrush. So whatever you are feeling and whatever you are thinking, your attitude is what's going to show the world what that is on a canvas, okay? So what we want to do today is cover 4 things. 1, where do you get your attitude from? 2, what your attitude cannot do for you. 3, what your attitude can do for you. And 4, how to make it your greatest asset, okay? So first, where did you get your attitude from? So first off, personality, who you are, what type of things you enjoy, what type of things that make you happy, make you sad, what type of things bother you, what things don't, okay? So it's basically how you are naturally wired, right? You can't really change that, but that's where you get your attitude from, all right? Second thing is your environment, what's around you, all right? So everyone's environment has a different way that it's impacted them, how they grew up, whether they broke up with someone or it was a big breakup after a long relationship, or whether you had a rich family or a poor family, or growing up in those neighborhoods or those kinds of schools, whatever. So basically, that environment that you're in impacts who you are as a person and your attitude, all right? Next thing, expression of others. So what you feel. So basically, if you have like a harsh teacher or like parents that can emotionally scar you or whatever, that impacts your attitude and how you outwardly express what's inside, all right? So it can actually go both ways. It can either be positive things that impact or negative. So you can either get some negative reinforcement from a teacher, scar you, and you never want to do this stuff ever again. And at the same time, you can get some kind of positive impact from someone, and it completely changes your life. Again, impacts your attitude. All right? Self-image, how you see yourself. All right? So it's hard to see anything in the world as positive if you see yourself as negative. And so poor self-image and poor attitudes actually go hand in hand. All right? So self-image, how you see yourself. Exposure to growth opportunities, what you experience. All right? And so being able to get that experience is always a requirement for jobs. So you ever see like the best jobs that you really want, and they always say, hey, I need 10 to 15 years of experience. And they have all those memes with like little kids in hard hats, and they're like, this is what they wanted me to start to be able to get this job. Like that's experience is something that gives you a different attitude and different perspective in life, right? So they also say like people, like poker players, they always, no matter what, get dealt the random set of cards, and through experience, they know how to play them. And so that's like the difference there in that aspect. They got experience. They know how to deal with every kind of situation that comes at them, all right? Association with peers, who you are with, all right? You get your attitude from those that you're surrounded with. They say, he was a nice, remember how they would say, he was a nice kid hanging around the wrong crowd. What does that mean? Whenever you hear that saying. He got put in tough situations. He's not good anymore. What? So basically, they're saying that because of those people that he's associated with, he got involved in some shenanigans, and he was a really good kid, and he just basically went downhill, right? So your associations with your peers can, in fact, impact your attitude. So beliefs, what you think. So every thought you have shapes your life. The sum of all your thoughts comprises your overall attitude. So every little thing you think about and every little thing you believe, put that together, and that's your attitude. All right? And then the last thing that he calls out is your choices, what you do. So when you are younger, you have less choices to make. So basically whatever mama and baba tells you. But once you hit college, it's a different game. You now have choices and freedom and things that you can do. So the longer you live, the more choices you can make and the more responsible you are for how your life is turning out. So you may have a really tough time or suffer terrible tragedies. However, your attitude is still your choice. So you still can get into certain situations that impact your life, the things that you've been through, all these other types of things, but your attitude is still something that you can control, right? So keep in mind here, so we say attitude, and automatically people think of something negative. That when you hear attitude, you're like, ugh, that means it's someone that's like standing there, snapping their fingers like, like, no. Like, that's not what attitude is. Because again, we said attitude is just your inward expression, or your inward feelings being expressed outwardly, all right? So to change your life, you must make a choice to take a responsibility for your attitude and to do everything you can to make it work for you. Your attitude can truly become the difference maker. So what he's saying here is that first you have to make a choice that this is something that you want to take responsibility for. Nobody can impact your attitude and can tell you what your attitude and what you should believe on the inside is. You have full control over it, okay? So one thing that I want to throw out there as a disclaimer is that you cannot disconnect attitude from reality. Reality being facts, right? Reality being situations that we all deal with on a day-to-day basis. So if you, like, for instance, if you believe a dream on its own, that if you believe that a dream alone can bring success, then you'll be disappointed because you're not taking into consideration reality, all right? So when all other things are equal, which is what the point John Maxwell is trying to make here. When all things are equal, attitude can be the difference maker. So when we talk about that scenario with the job earlier, and who do they pick? Those two being equal, that difference maker which you guys called out, attitude is the biggest factor, okay? So what we want to talk about now is, now that we understand what attitude is and where it came from, let's talk about what it cannot do for you, okay? So first thing is, your attitude cannot substitute for competence. What does that mean? What is competence? Say it out loud. Ability to do something, okay? So your attitude, whether positive or negative, cannot impact or substitute your ability to do something, okay? So if you think you can do something, that's confidence. If you can do something, that's competence, okay? So both are needed for success. So you can't substitute one for another. So for instance, if I tell some random person, just walks into church, hey, go play the cymbals, and he can be like, yeah, I got it. And he walks up to him, what does he do? Why? Because he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't have the skill. He's never practiced. He doesn't have competence. So you can have the most positive attitude about it, but if you don't have the skill, it doesn't work. So you can't substitute it, okay? Now, what happened? I ain't gonna say nothing. You know, we're on live stream right now. Okay. So second thing, your attitude cannot substitute experience. Okay. So experience is hard. So experience is something that you usually have to get through, so that way you can learn from it, and it's not something that you can just pick up. So if you get into a difficult job and you don't have the experience, like let's say a lot of you guys actually did end up working at Chick-fil-A and you're working through rush hour, it's a lot different than just thinking you're mentally prepared versus if you've done it for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 months, and you know exactly how to deal with rush hour. All right. So being able to get that experience, it doesn't matter if you have a very positive attitude or not, experience is something that it won't be able to replace. All right. Your attitude cannot change facts. All right. So if you are 5'3", are you going to be a successful NBA center in this day and age NBA? I'm going to say maybe back in the day something could have happened. I don't know. Maybe in the future we all get shorter. I don't know. But in this day and age, if you're 5'3" and the most positive person in the world, can you be a successful NBA center? Let dreams be dreams. Yallah. What on the A, right? You can't change facts with that, all right? So Maya Angelou actually said, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. Don't complain, okay? So I'll read it again. If you don't like something, change it. If you cannot change it, change your attitude. Do not complain, okay? And that's actually very similar to what we learned in church. So I don't know if you guys remember that we would always hear, pray about it. And either the prayer is going to result in a situation changing, or you are changing how you look at the situation. All right. So your attitude cannot change the facts. Your attitude cannot substitute for personal growth. What is personal growth? Have you guys ever heard the term personal growth? What do you think it means? Developing, training, being able to learn new skills, learn new things, all right? So a time comes when you need to stop waiting for the man you want to be and start becoming, or stop wanting to be that man and actually start being that man, okay? Wanting and being are two different things, all right? So no positive attitude can substitute that continual learning and development and just being able to be that person you all desire to be, okay? Yep.
This really like spiritually, or
It does.
so this is more than just like a personal growth.
Well,
Do you think the two are different?
how?
Like, do you think?
Like the way we have an attitude about the world and the way we express it, the way we experience it is different than what our contentment should be spiritually. And I would say that because you started off talking about our inward feeling is the way, like what we express is our inward feeling, when in like our spiritual life and our relationship with Christ, it's an emotional, there's an emotional aspect to it, but you know, that's not what we're concreting.
So that is a great point. So here's the key thing to keep in mind, is that your attitude impacts the 3 areas of your life. Your mental, 4 areas: mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. All right? Every aspect of your life is impacted by your attitude. So for instance, do you have a positive attitude around wanting to learn and grow more and learn some Alhan? Or are you being just completely negative and pessimistic about it? Which one are you going to be more successful with? Do you have a positive attitude around the future of the church and the things to come? Do you have a positive or negative attitude around where you see your role in the church and what value you can provide? So there's like a lot of people, and if you look at a lot of what like St. Paul and a lot of the books in the New Testament say, a lot of it is very much attitude based. So for instance, count it all joy when you fall into tribulations. Where's that from? No. Good guess though. No. All right. James. All right. So count it all joy when you fall into various trials, right? So trials are things that happen. Count it all joy. Joy is a what? Yes, joy is a fruit of the Spirit, but where does that come from as well? It's here. All right? So your attitude really does impact every single aspect of your life. And I think that's a key thing to understand here, is that it's not very vague. It's not very specific to your career only, and it's not very specific to how you interact with your parents and your friendships and relationships. It's actually a much broader and a bigger deal. Your attitude when you come on Sunday, are you grumpy because you got to be up at 8 o'clock? Are you grumpy because you have to go through like some intense traffic, and so you come at church and you're just angry and you're like, whatever, I want to get this over with so I can go home and nap? All that is attitude. So let's hold that thought, and I want to dig deeper into that in the end. All right? So I cannot choose what happens to me, but I can always choose what happens in me. My attitude and the areas beyond my control can be the difference maker, but my attitude in the areas I do control will be the difference maker. What's the difference there? Yeah. He's popular. So let me read it again. My attitude in the areas beyond my control can be the difference maker. My attitude in the areas I do control will be the difference maker. Basically, either way, he's saying here, you cannot lose with a positive attitude and an optimistic attitude. Because things you can't control, there's a good chance that it can be a difference maker to move it and sway it in the right direction. But for the things that you do control, it will make a difference. There's nothing that you control that if you put a positive attitude to it, that you will not have a better outcome. All right? So a positive attitude will not let you do everything, but it can help you do anything better than you would if your attitude were negative. Anybody want to elaborate on that a little bit? A positive attitude will not let you do everything, but it can help you do anything better than you would if your attitude were negative. Why? Sorry, say that again.
Wait.
Trying to avoid that. I'm saying when your attitude is negative, you're basically down crashing everything that's in front of you, so you're not able to change whatever the problem is, because you're constantly thinking of what bad is going to happen, and you're constantly thinking of the future. So if you're doing that, then you can't fix a problem with a sane mind.
I love it. Beautiful. No, thank you. What's your name?
Josephina.
Josemina?
Josephina.
Josephina.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Hanny. Okay. All right, so here, this is the first time that he really talks about the concept of positive attitude, okay? And positive attitude really makes the biggest difference in the world. And I will tell you this, and we won't go into it. Any of the OGs of the church here, like back in the 80s, go talk to them about the dealings of the church and when things got started and how it was. And you would see a lot of how that positive and optimistic attitude made the biggest difference in how this church ended up here today like this. So Uncle Rumsey, Megdi Saad, my dad, if you see him, whoever, just ask them and you will see this in live action, all right? So we'll go through this a little bit faster. So your attitude, what it can do for you. It can make a difference in your approach to life. It can make a difference in your relationships with people, and it can make a difference in how you face challenges, and it is the difference maker. So if you have a positive attitude, when you are facing a challenge, a pessimistic attitude will say, oh no, look at me, woe is me, I can't get through this, why am I always the one suffering, ya Rab, all right? An optimistic attitude and the things that you can control, you can go and start looking at ways to solving the problem. How can we overcome this mountain? How can we, so it's looking at, oh no, what was me? And switching to, how can we accomplish this? So what's the most famous example that you guys can think of when it comes to the Egyptian cops and being able to see that difference with the negative and positive attitude? And I'll give you a hint. We fast for 3 days. Don't say Jonah. We have a fast yearly for this for 3 days. Ma'atam. What happened? What did they do, though? But why did they do it in the first place? their faith was challenged, their lives were challenged. So they could have either been like, oh, I'm out, packed up, left. Or they could have been like, no, and made a fuss and Tahrir Square and all that kind of stuff. But what did they do? They had the hope and optimism, and they had the right attitude to do what they believe in and what their faith teaches them, and being able to look to solve the problem. Fasted and prayed that God sends some way to protect them. Whether they prayed or not, I know the governor was telling them, make this mountain move. Some people may have been actually praying for the mountain to move. Some would have just been praying for an answer. Either way, it was an optimistic view, and they had the positive attitude that something will come and God will defend them. But those who were very pessimistic about it, obviously, it was a very different route, right? So your attitude can actually make a very big difference for every one of us in every single aspect, all right? Being able to look at things as glass half full, like, when they, like there's a lot of stories where people go and complain about, like back in the old days that they had to do a long walk to fill an urn with water and bring it back home. And they're like, oh my God, this was such a long and terrible walk, when you have others with a positive attitude that are saying, oh, thank God, look, I go and I come back and I have a thing full of water. So they're doing the same task, but they're doing it very differently. And you can see the results of one versus the other, is that one is done more joyfully versus the other, all right? So you are not what you think you are, but what you think you are. So the way that you look at yourself and the way that you think, that is who is going to be expressed outwardly. So if you feel that, oh, I wish I was this person, but I'm not really that person, I wish I could be there one day, you're never going to get there. You're always going to think that I'm just always a carrot that's being dangled in front of you, all right? So if you come back and you say, I wish I knew more, I had more knowledge about the Bible. I wish I had more verses memorized. One day. Versus I am going to actually do that. Let's start with one today, and I'll do another verse tomorrow, or I can do one next week, whatever it is. But the whole point is you are accomplishing your goals, but it's the way that you think about it. Weight loss is the same kind of way. Weight loss, if you just go, I wish I was skinnier. Then you go eat some wings with extra ranch. And then you have a brownie with ice cream on top, right? You are not going to lose weight. But if you start believing that, okay, I am losing weight from this moment, I am starting my weight loss because I want to become and will be that skinnier person, it's going to happen, right? But if you don't think that way, then you're not going to be able to overcome the challenges, all right? So how to make your attitude your greatest asset. So first off, you need to take responsibility for your attitude and understand that you own it. Nobody owns your attitude. No matter what happens to you in life, you own your attitude, nobody else. Things impact it, but you don't owe anyone anything for your attitude, all right? So you take responsibility and evaluate your present attitude. So you need to look at yourself and say, how am I feeling and how do I look at life? Am I very negative and pessimistic all the time? Am I always complaining? Am I adding value to other people's lives? Like, you have to be able to do that self-examination to understand how you are with others. And if you don't know how to self-examine, then you ask someone you trust. And you say, give me guidance, give me direction. What do you think I am? Do you see me as a pessimistic person? Optimistic? Somewhere in the middle? And then you can know and be able to see yourself in what you need to change. But if you can't evaluate yourself and know where you are, you won't be able to. A lot of us get very puffed up and think that we're fine. If you think you're fine, most likely you're on the bad side. That's the key thing to understand. If you think that, you're probably on the pessimistic side. All right? So evaluate your present attitude and then develop the desire to change. We have to be able to say, I want to get here. I want to be in this place. I want to get there. If I don't have the desire to get here, I won't get here. Right? Change your attitude by changing your thoughts. We said earlier, your attitude is the outward expression of your inward self. So you can't change your outward without being inward. And develop good habits. Manage your attitude daily. Your attitude will not, all of a sudden, once you're positive, it's going to be great. It doesn't work like that. You need to be able to control this thing daily, all right? So one of the things that he talks about is that negative thoughts leads to negative beliefs, which leads to decisions, which is wrong actions, which is continual actions, which leads to bad habits, and then the circle of life keeps going. Is there any way out of this? No. This is what we call a downward spiral. All right? So that's where negative thoughts is always the start of this. And we hear the same thing about sins. Sins leads to, the first was a desire, thought, what have you. It leads to action and it leads to sin, right? So that's why we start from the thoughts. Thoughts are the biggest deals. Your mind and your heart is the first thing that you really need to work on to be able to have that kind of change, all right? So to kind of conclude, and then we'll open up a little discussion. So impossible is just a big big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in a world they've been given than to explore the power that they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. Same thing with the Mu'attam, the example from previous. They thought that those that were challenging the cops and threatening them, they thought it was impossible. We proved otherwise. So anytime you hear someone say that's impossible, it's not going to happen. All right? So any questions before I continue?
You said your attitude doesn't change facts.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to be an NBA player still.
Who?
The fact that you got.
Yeah, I know. No. It's NBA center. He can be an NBA player.
Yeah, so it's still impossible. Attitude.
You're so negative. No, I'm just kidding. Yes.
So like you talked in the beginning about how some people are put in the wrong situation in the wrong time, and that kind of like, but they have the power to change that. Like we are in control of changing that. The reason it's really interesting to hear that is because like right now I just feel like dealing with a lot of the people that we've been dealing with, it's not like it's always the thing to tell them like change it, but I feel like there's this like systematic mindset that a lot of like families that they're already put into, and it's sort of like just this cycle of negativity, this cycle of like they're stuck in this position, this cycle that they're like determined or predisposed to like this is the way they're gonna grow up, and you want to encourage them, right? And then you like take them and you really try to show them something else, but they just go back home to what they think is their reality, you know? And so it's like changing mindsets, like, you know, that's sort of something I've been struggling with a lot, or just understanding at least
So that's a really good example. So the key thing there to understand is that the fact that you can control or change your attitude does not mean that you can control or change your environment. No matter what, you need to accept and prepare that you are going to go into potentially a negative or dangerous or toxic situation. So for instance, if you go to work every day, it's not going to be gumdrops and rainbows. No, you're going to be going into an environment that's very intense, and you're going to have someone that's toxic here, someone that's trash talking you here, someone that's trying to say bad things about your quality of work because they want a promotion. Like everywhere you go, you are going to be interacting with that. And one of the very sad and frustrating parts is that it also is your example where it happens in our families. And that is something where honestly it's very hard to control, especially with all right, so a lot of these like Egyptian people mindset, you know, like the old school mentality where they're like, you know, ghazban aynek, you know, that kind of stuff, like that's a very different like cultural mindset that honestly it's not reality. You still have to respect your parents and honor your parents. It's a commandment. You're not getting by that. But that doesn't mean that if you are in a toxic situation that you are okay to battle back. You don't need to battle back. Okay? You siphon out the things that are good and quality that they are kind of yelling at you for, right? You don't fight back, and you take whatever that 2% of positive direction or whatever out of it. But you got to keep in mind, you can't fight fire with fire. That's not going to work. So that's the big thing that we all have to understand and agree on. Fire with fire does not work, because a lot of times it ends up being fire with gasoline. And what happens when you throw gasoline on fire? Cambola, that's right. All right, yes. Did I answer the question or no? You can tell me no if you want.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot more to it. I feel like you're just
Definitely. Oh, 100%.
like the work environment. Like you go to work, but you know what your roots are, you know. But if you never really saw it, like true healthy roots, you know, just continuously grow. And the younger you catch, like the situations, the easier, of course. But like when you're, you know, with people that are like, you know, in their 20s or going into college, and like this is the age like where like now they have the chance to like really make their own impact, but like everything up to that point has been completely, you know, ugly. So like
I agree.
come to that.
So here's the other cool thing that happens in America. I don't know if you know, but when you become 18 and you go get a college degree and you get a real job and that financial independence, you have control of your life. Again, honor your parents. But that doesn't mean that you are at their mercy all day, every day. And so it's funny because you may have like 30, 40-year-olds who still act like they live in their parents' house. And everything that you hear from like abunas and spiritual guides and everything is you need to have boundaries. You have to have boundaries because your new life and who you want to become is very different. So so to your point, it's a very complex situation. But at the end of the day, the way that you look at it and the way that you handle the situation is 100% up to you. No one can control your attitude at all. Only you can. Yes, sorry.
I understand where George is coming from, and he's saying it more from the perspective that this is a bigger impact on children. Like, this is where you're going to build your attitude from. So knowing what he does and who he works with, I totally understand and agree. You can't wait till you're 18 to fix it. And sometimes you're put in that position where it's constantly embedded in your head. And then when you're 18, you're seeing something completely different than what you've been taught for 18 years. So I understand where he's coming from.
Oh, I totally agree. But the whole point is that you're not waiting till you're 18 to fix it. That's the whole point. It's at some point, if it's an unfixable situations, because those exist. But here's the funny part. They're probably like, what, 5%, maybe lower. I don't have facts, but I know it's a smaller number. But a big part of it is because people are looking for fights, or we have pride and we're not willing to let things go.
Are we talking about the more adult or the child? Because last week
What's the difference?
The control of the attitude. You're seeing something and you can't control the situation if you're 5 seeing something that's going to impact your attitude.
Right.
Like last week in the Sunday meeting, the speaker said something about working with kids in missions and stuff. This one particular kid saw abuse in her family, and the mother would try to leave, but she would come back. And her impression when she left was, I want to have kids and I want to be a good mom, but I don't want to get married. But that's not how the equation works. So that's how her attitude was shaped as she was growing. Then you have to go when she's an adult and kind of reverse all of that.
I'm totally with you.
That's the angle he's coming from.
So that makes sense. So that specific example. So in a situation like that, you have to find someone that understands that kind of deep psychology and really talk to them to get guidance and direction. So like those one-off complex stories, like there's not a general rule that can be followed. It has to actually be examined deeply. But in general, you still have control. But deep kind of situations like that, that's something that requires a lot more tender love and care. Yeah.
He's trying to tell the people he works with that he knows that they've been taught a certain way. You have to kind of go and get that more controlled help.
Yeah.
So speaking about like complexity, the reason I want to talk about it a little, especially with attitude, because I just feel like it's sort of like a situation in our church, and yesterday being like Domestic Violence Day and like a stance on that. What do you think, like, where do you think we can, as a church, like take it? Because I mean, I don't think domestic violence is like a complex case in our church. Like I feel like it's a very common, like very, very common situation. But do you think like we have any positions or any way of addressing or taking a stronger stance, like collectively as a church, or you know, you could start somewhere locally, of course, but do you think, you know, we have that kind of control, or do you think we just always say because the reason I bring it up is because this is sort of like the form where we could discuss things about like where we could change. You talk one-on-one, you say, you know, you have the attitude and it's your responsibility, but us as like community leaders, do you feel like we have a position where we could ever try to address that kind of issue for the kids that are changing their attitudes?
Yeah, definitely. So the smallest changes. So when you're talking about on a formal community level, though, that's where a lot of what you're trying to do and what you need to do needs to go through the church leadership. So if you're looking for like a formal position or something formal that we can do as a church and a group, you got to follow through and like, you know, again, follow like Abuna. You have to follow his lead there and say, it's an issue, we need to do it, here's what we're proposing, give me a thumbs up and let's do it. But if it's something that's like, on a one-on-one basis, that's different, but you're looking on a bigger scale, that's definitely something that you can do. Keep in mind, there are, again, with the things you can control, things you can't control. You can influence all you want and try to influence people, but influence is not forcing. That's a completely different story. So when you're starting to talk about enforcing certain things, that's where it starts getting a little bit sticky and you need to figure out the right ways to handle that. Domestic violence, that's a very interesting situation. I'm not touching it. But it's, yeah, I would definitely talk to Abuna around that, especially if there's an urgent need for it, if that makes sense. Yeah. Man, y'all got some intense stuff going on.
So this is like maybe like a general.
Anyone want to ask me what the 7 major feasts are? Keep it easy. What's up?
So, hold on, I'm trying to remember my question. 7 major feasts. Oh no, that's not it. So no, this is like general. So what happens if you don't see growth, whether it's spiritual growth or personal growth in your life? Like, how do you how do you still have a positive attitude?
So first thing there, the importance of a mentor is huge in that situation. And I'll tell you why. You may still see yourself the exact same way and in the exact same position, but someone who is looking from the outside and can see your progress is going to give you a completely different perspective. So for instance, some of you guys that have been here for the last 4 years would say, no, Riley hasn't changed, it's all the same. Me coming back from 4 years, I'm like, oh my God, like what's going on here? Like, we got an NBA-style basketball court that they're playing soccer on. No, you got to respect the floor. All right? You can see, but so someone from the outside that's like, that you, and a big thing there is you have to trust that person to actually look for your best interests. Because, again, there's a lot of shady people out there that are going to sway you in a direction that's in their best interest, which doesn't work. You have to find that spiritual mentor, which is a completely different topic that you have to be able to trust will steer you in the right direction. They will be able to tell you, hey, it's kind of iffy situation. You really need to work on X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, look at the progress you've made. It's fantastic. Like, these are the steps that you've taken. That's great. But you may feel very pessimistic about it. But pessimism and optimism does not change the facts. Facts is, hey, you lost 5 pounds. Not bad. You want 50, but hey, at least it's 5, 10%. You know, you're getting somewhere. But you may feel differently. So... Give me an example.
We'll come back to it.
Yes, Blake. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think there's a verse that it says like, what's impossible with men is possible with God. So it's a good verse.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, Blake.
So if we wanted to take the example we used of Zacchaeus of spiritual growth, so St. James says, draw near to God and he will draw near to you. So if we want to become more godly. So let's look at Zacchaeus' attitude and then look at that of the masses. The masses thought they were already holy because they're saying this, you know, Jesus is going to sit with a sinner. So they're already judging him. So Zacchaeus, on the other hand, is like, I want to be better. I want to see Christ. I want to come near to him. And so he tried to draw near to him as best as he could. So I think what we have to understand as far as spiritual growth, that's a continuous process, right? So we look at certain people in the church as like, oh, they made it. You know, you never make it all the way, right? Until you actually get to Christ, when you pass, right? When we actually end this life, and then we see whether or not we actually reached our goal. But the point is, it is a continuous process.
That is an awesome example. So in that same light, going on with AJ's question, Zacchaeus did something. He was getting judged by others. He's doing his action to recover and repent. And then Christ here says, today salvation has come into this house because he also is the son of Abraham. So Christ there also took the step where he said, I saw the change. You may have not seen it. The 50 other million people that were out there didn't see it, but I saw the change. That validation was there, and it's very apparent. Great example, Blake. Thank you. Questions, comments? Let me ask a couple then. Put me on the spot with these intense questions. Yeah, very. Some things going on in Raleigh. So, George asked a question or made the statement. What does this have to do with spiritual life? So, I'm just going to make the statement. Attitude is not a big deal. Change my mind. You know what I mean? No one knows what I mean? Am I the only one on Reddit? Okay, all right, thank God. Is attitude a big deal based off of everything we talked about today? Why? Who says that it's not a big deal or as big of a deal as we discussed? Who thinks that it's still just hogwash? Sorry? I'm sorry. It's really hot in here too, so. All right. So is it possible, let's give a situational. Is it possible to keep a close friend who is toxic? So you have a toxic friend. Can you keep him as a close friend and still have a positive attitude? حد يقول لي حاجة. Max, hit me.
If your goal of having him as a friend is to save him from that toxicity and like to keep him away from the bad things, then that's good. But if that's not the goal, if you're just like being his friend just to be his friend and he's being toxic, that's gonna go on you. So there's like no point in keeping that, because it's just like.
All right, let me ask a different question before you go on. Is there a difference between friendship and acquaintance?
I mean, acquaintance.
Somebody you deal with on a day-to-day basis or in life versus a friend.
Oh,
That's
So I'll give you an example.
Acquaintance
Acquaintance is a coworker that sits down the cubes and you're like, hey Joe, hey Frank, and then you move on with life.
That's not friends.
A friend, right? So then a friend is someone that you what?
Yeah, you go.
You sit at home, you get a
and
pizza,
text.
watch the game. You guys, oh, what happened with that girl? Oh my God, I can't believe.
That you want good company, not bad company, because you know the verse. Yeah.
Okay, so can you keep a close friend?
No.
One that's toxic.
I don't think so. I say no.
Okay, why do you say no?
Debate the yes.
Why do you say no?
We'll go with no, and then we'll debate the yes.
I said no because do you want another explanation?
I mean, you
just
didn't
bad
know what
company
acquaintance
corrupts
was.
good morals. You can't keep a close
I love
friend that's toxic.
You have to.
You can hold it. I'm loud. It depends on the situation. I mean, if that person hasn't always been toxic, like they've been your friend for years, and maybe they were impacted by something, you wouldn't abandon them because of like a bump in the road for them. You would support them as much as you can until you set your boundary, like, okay, I'm done. But you wouldn't abandon them. You would find
So the
ways.
fact that you're setting a boundary and talking about not abandon them, does that make them a close friend?
I mean, it might not be your friendship that's toxic. Whatever their behaviors and things, like, you know what I mean?
All right. So let's go with the basic middle school example. Friend sitting next to you on the couch, smoking a doobie. Is that gonna corrupt good morals? I watched that 70s show the other day. I'm just kidding.
It depends, because I mean, if you were raised to not, like, you respect yourself enough to not, middle school, you're influential, like you can.
No.
be
This is
big
still like in
different ways.
general. Like we're talking about, we're all grown folks here. We're all in college and up.
It's about the boundaries you have for yourself and who you would, or what you would allow to happen in your friendship. Like, to just say I don't want to deal with this person because they're going through something or of their mentality, I don't think that's
Agree with you, but that's not the statement.
okay.
So you should never abandon anybody. All right? We don't abandon people as Christians. That's not a thing we do. Okay? If there's someone that we know that's struggling, we are all, in theory, we should always be there to support them. Okay? But here, this is close friendships. This is someone that you are an extension of. Okay? Like, I have the honor to be able to call me to be my close friend. You too? After what you said? I'm going to reevaluate this now. So at the end of the day, those that you surround yourself with, you are going to be kind of a product of that, okay? So they always tell you, out in the leadership classes, corporate world, whatever, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. Why? Because you are going to be brought to that level. So Detney, it's a good idea, all right? Here's the other thing too. A close friend is someone that you spend a lot of time with. And if they're toxic or getting into, so there's two levels of toxicity. So we can keep it simple. Level one is gossip, negativity, bashing people, yarab, eda, lepse, and they just keep going nonstop. What do you start doing? It slowly starts eating away at you, and either it drives you crazy inside, or you start doing those things. Another example are the places and the things they do. You go to the club, go to this masharafe, go to the shisha bar. You want to spend time with them. They're your close friends. So you're going to the club, this bar, the shisha place. So you're following along. That ultimately is going to put you in bad situations. All right? So at the end of the day, we have to understand that the people that you surround yourselves with makes the biggest difference. All right? If you have someone that's very toxic, that's bringing you down, first you need to be aware, are you that person? And then second of all, you need to examine and evaluate those that you're spending your time with the most. Are they bringing you down? Are they bringing you up? Question. So what comes first? Yes?
Yeah, okay, so I just need to touch base with reality. So
yes,
the positive attitude should be kept for our health, our mental health. It's not to influence other people, because influencing is different thing. And so if we don't want to be pessimistic people, we have to think positively for our lives and for the sake of our lives in this level. Influencing is something higher level of thinking, or needs too much mentoring. And what we're doing, like with my employees, I give them some of the positive attitude to boost their work, to boost their job, but I have to put for them some boundaries. But I mean, like for the social, for the people, for the sake of my friends, I shouldn't bring up all my positive purple life or pink life to them. For toxic people especially, I just have to be humble with them and to love them.
Oh,
so
beautiful.
I just have to don't want to go away from what I was saying, but just one thing. I know this is maybe like it's not going on with what you're saying, but yeah, having positive attitude, as I said, is a good thing for our health, but it's not healthy for other people, because most of our life right now, like if you go to any slum areas or African countries, you'll find these people having more positive attitude than you, because they are thankful and grateful for their life, and they're trying to improve their lives. However, you are still looking for the $2,000 to buy the new iPhone, and you're stuck in a very small circle with too many goals that you cannot achieve at all. You're just dreaming up to the sky, and then being so optimistic, when you fall, you'll fall greatly. So these two things I was pointing to, like how to prevent falling, and what to keep, how to be with the people around you. That's different things.
So you bring up a great point, and there's one thing that we kind of have to be clear about. Being positive does not mean you are in people's faces with your positivity. It does not mean you are showing off and whatnot. I'll give you an example. I hate social media. Why? Because everywhere you go on social media, it's people like, oh, look at me. Oh, life is so great. Ha ha ha. I'm rubbing it in your face, and I got 8,000 likes. Yeah. Where's the positivity and optimism there? No, that's just me shoving things in your face for you to absorb, and it bothers you, whatnot. So humility and positivity.
I just want to bring something. The picture of the guy who lost the 100 pounds and gets his two pictures before starting the gym and after starting. That's upsets me a lot and turns me like rageous.
So that situation, I can see that as a little bit different, because he's trying to hopefully motivate people, like you were using the word influence people in the right direction, to do something positive, to build that kind of momentum to do something. So I agree with you there. But the key thing is that having a positive attitude does not mean you are throwing your positivity in other people's face. Like if someone's sitting there like, oh, this is just a glorious day. That would drive me crazy if like Mina B did that nonstop in front of me. Okay? That's not what being positive is. That's not what having a right attitude is. Having a right attitude really deals about how you interact with situations and how you deal with situations that come up. Okay? So the example of, I don't know how many saints that we have in the Cynics are that have bad, terrible situations and threats thrown at them, but they're not throwing anything in the face of my God's better than your God. No, there's none of that. It's just, I'm here in the name of Christ. I love him and I honor his name. The end. It's not, you don't see people throwing all of the goodness into their face, which is something we definitely don't want to do. So your point is 100% spot on, and I think we have to understand the difference understanding the difference between humility and being positive. Very two different things that we get mixed up a whole lot. And I will say this, we have to be very careful too what we're posting on social media as well. We don't want to have like a fake facade in front of people where we're just like, look at me, I'm just glorious all the time and life is, fantastic. That's not reality. We all have our struggles, we all have our issues, but it's, again, we're just deciding to put certain events in front of people's faces just so we can get a bunch of likes and noticed, right? So definitely humility with positivity is huge. Very good point. What was your name? Kareem. Thank you, Kareem. All right, let me see if there's anything else. What time are we supposed to end? 8:30? There's no time. All right, we'll just say anything else and then we'll close. Yes, Blake.
So the last thing that relates to number 2 was, as we discussed, attitude is something that the individual has control over. So if you're staying with someone and in an effort to change their attitude, you could do everything under the sun within your power to try and improve their toxicity and have no effect, because it's up to them ultimately. So that's another sort of vote for, should you have a close friend who's continuously toxic?
So, okay. So I will say one thing too. Again, to that point. Again, a lot of caveats that are happening here. Our goal is not also to prove others' toxicity. We're not there to say, you're toxic, I'm out. That is something that, again, with a soft heart, where people are willing to listen and to actually have a real one-on-one conversation, that's where the opportunities for those kinds of conversations to come up. But you don't want to go out looking for the toxic people and being considered kind of a judge, because I think that's exactly what happened in the story of Zacchaeus. Right or wrong?
Right. I
Oh, what were you saying? I misunderstood then.
I was just implying that, like, you know, whether or not you should have a close friend who's toxic, like, should you maintain that relationship? As someone said earlier, like, yeah, if you want to try to help them not be toxic and you try to improve their attitude,
Yes.
it's up to them ultimately.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. You can't control how others think and feel. You can only control yourself.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what we discussed in this, you know, in this conversation, that, you know, our attitude is under our control. By the same caveat, their attitude is under their control.
Yes.
And therefore, you can only put in so much before you, like, if they don't want to change no matter what you do, so then you have to really consider, like, should I maintain this relationship?
Yes. I agree with that.
That's all.
Yeah, I think we can also support these people and feel empathic with them, because if they are toxic, maybe that's of their background. Maybe they are suffering, or maybe they are suffering from their toxicity. So we need to be supportive.
That's what I was going with when I spoke.
Right, but still, it's you can still play a positive role in trying to bring people out of those toxicity or toxic situations. So for instance, if you have someone that is like nonstop like gossiping and being negative about others and being judgmental, you as someone that's there and having that relationship with them can try to change the subject or just draw the line. I'm not really comfortable talking about that. Let's talk about something else, right? You have that ability to influence others without necessarily insulting them or calling them out. So that is how you can build a more positive environment, is by being able to, the way that you are in your attitude, like, trust me when I say this, is contagious. That's why we're saying that those that you surround yourself with, like, always surround yourself with smarter people than you, because that is contagious. The way that you guys give off of one another really influences one another in a group. If you hang out with the same 5 people for a year straight, I guarantee you guys are going to look 100% like each other, no matter how you were before. You influence others by your actions without necessarily doing anything towards them. So you ever heard the example of preachers and people who evangelize? They don't go and open the Bible and start telling people things. What do? They let their actions speak for them. They let the way that they are going to serve one another be the message in itself. And that's the biggest influence that people are hit with. That's the same kind of thing that we want to do with our attitude and our relationships around us. And a lot of it you also have to understand, and that's why like being with a good core group of people makes a big difference, is because you recharge. You can go out there and deal with the toxicity when you recharge yourself spiritually, emotionally, physically, every aspect, and go out and deal with it again. But if you stay in it full time, like they say, prison changes people. Why? Because they spend a lot of time in a certain environment with the same people over and over again, right? We have to understand that. And I think, honestly, the biggest weakness that we have as a community is that we're so quick to look at others rather than ourselves. It is so key for us to be able to see, what conversations have I had today? What thoughts have I had? What feelings did I have because I influenced others and I made mistakes and I, X, Y, and Z. That is the biggest thing. When you start looking at yourself first, that's going to be the biggest impact driver. Trust me when I say that. I've experienced that millions of times, both positive and negative, mostly on the negative side, unfortunately. But
yeah, so I think we have to move from being the multitudes to be Zacchaeus now.
100%. If you want to go extra, it'd be like Christ. So, no, I'm just kidding. Other questions, comments? All right, so take home message. Really go on your drive home, whenever. Turn off Netflix, turn off YouTube, whatever it is that you're listening to, and just think for a moment, how do I feel that my attitude is? And what is it that I can change, and what do I need to start changing as of that moment? Keep in mind, the environments around us don't necessarily need to change, but the way we look at them and the way we interact with them 100% is within your control. 100%. Not 99, not 98. 100% you control your attitude and how you feel about the things that are happening around you. Okay? So If you don't feel that you have that ability to do that, get a spiritual mentor and talk to them. Get some guidance and direction. Okay? Alrighty, let's stand up for prayer. Oh, sorry, Mina B has announcements.
Do you have any recommendation for any part of the scriptures to read before doing this?
I'm gonna defer to Bona on that one. Well, I'll say this one thing. So Bona and Gillis actually told us this like many years ago, and I never realized it until, so forgive my spiritual ignorance when I say this, but he always has said that the Bible in itself is a lot of history, facts, quotes, what have you, for us to learn about our faith and what have you. But when you read the Psalms, that's really when you start hitting a lot of emotion with prayer and what David was doing. So whenever you're looking for something for self-examination, and I don't have this off the top of my head, but I know it's like everywhere across the internet if you guys Google it, there are psalms specific to everything that you're trying to do. So when you are sad, when you are hurt, when you are, and there's like 100 different things that exist out there. Find a psalm related to what you feel that your biggest struggle is, or what you are feeling at that moment, and that's where you would focus. Like the Psalms really bring out so much emotion through prayer. That's where I would hit. So I don't know which one exactly, so I'm bad at that part in itself, but I would definitely recommend something in the Psalms and read it out loud, because a lot of it is extremely emotional and very, it has a lot of deeper connection than other areas in the Bible. So definitely Psalms. I don't know where though.
Thank you very much, Annie. All right, so announcements. So again, for those who weren't here at the beginning, Hanny is an original. He's an original member of the Raleigh Church from the Raleigh community. He's here visiting, so make him feel welcome. His wife, Monica, is with us here as well. So some of you may know her. So lovely wife, Monica. And then tomorrow, God willing, if you guys have a chance, they'll be here with Mikey. Some of you want to meet Mikey here in the morning for liturgy. But don't overwhelm him. He'll probably overwhelm you. So, but that is a reminder that every Saturday, the first Saturday of every month is an all English liturgy, and there's a new program